So we have a special visitor today. We're doing a webinar here on a hot topic, especially in the state of Florida, and that is homeowners insurance. I know a lot of you have experienced frustration with your homeowners insurance, whether it's gone up on you since you purchased a home, or maybe you're purchasing a new home and the policy was a little bit higher than you probably imagined. But anyway, we're going to dive into a couple of questions regarding insurance. And I have a longtime expert and trusted advisor that I personally use, and her name is Deena Calcagino, and she's with Dewey Insurance. Deena, I wanted to thank you for joining us here today. Do you want to just give us a quick kind of, your background story professionally, and then we're going to dive into a couple questions.
Sure. Thank you for having me, first of all. So my name is Deena Calcagino with Dewey Insurance in Cooper City. I've actually been doing this for 30 years. I've owned the agency for 18 now. We specialize in homeowners insurance, so this is a perfect topic for us because this is what we do all day.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks, Deena. Yeah, so we'll dive into it. So now remind me, because we've had some issues with insurance companies pulling out of the state of Florida. Like that was a big thing, I believe, last year. But can you touch on that as to why the companies initially pulled out and what has changed since then?
Sure. In 2021 and 2022, we had about 12 companies actually go insolvent. So they filed bankruptcy and we had to rewrite policies from them because they were no longer in business. Along with that, some of the existing companies just pulled out of the state of Florida, decided to stop writing. And that was due to high claim volumes from water claims, things like that, and the ensuing
No, don't worry. You can pick right back up where you left off. Yeah.
So that was in the claims and then ensuing lawsuits regarding that. So in 2023, some sweeping legislation, the largest that we've seen since I've been in the business, passed, and that basically created a reinsurance plan for the insurance companies, and also some changes in how claims are handling, and that would make it so where the companies curb their expenses, and so that it made it more friendly for insurance companies to be in the state of Florida.
Awesome. And so just to kind of piggyback off that, it wasn't so much the storms, you would say, right? That causes more of like the litigation that really caused issues for maybe some insurance companies to either pull out or why premiums went up really high.
Right. The storms weren't necessarily the reason. It is part of it because there is some expenses for that, but all hurricanes are reinsured. So the insurance companies have to buy reinsurance to pay for those, but the water damage claims, pipe burst, things like that, you can't reinsure for that. So that comes directly off of their profits, which makes the bottom line less, and their capital just wasn't enough to keep in business.
Got it. Okay. All right. So second question for you here is, so when we have buyers that do a home inspection, which is one of the first things they do when they go under contract, I would say by far the number one issue on the inspection is the roof. Uh,
Absolutely.
Yeah, we've seen either contracts cancel because of the roof. We've seen them ask for seller credits because of the roof. People are afraid that they can't get the property insured. So, what are the requirements now? Because I know some things have changed, but what are the requirements, for a roof in order for it to be insurable?
Okay. That was actually part of the legislation that passed last year as well. So you have to have at least 5 years life expectancy on the roof, on any type of roof, whether it's tile, metal, shingle. You have to have at least 5 years left on the roof. And the roof can have no deficiencies, no cracked tiles, no granule loss on the shingles. The flat roof has to be in good condition. So those are what the inspections are picking up. And if any of those deficiencies are in there, the insurance companies are just not going to want to insure them.
Gotcha. And it's really up to the inspector though, right? Like if they're the ones that are deeming that the roof has less than 5 years. So it's pretty subjective, right?
It is, but then you have to have photos with that to prove that. So if an inspector puts that 6 or 7 years left on the roof, but then the insurance company can see that the granule loss is there or the tiles are missing, that obviously doesn't have that life expectancy as well. So it can get kicked back on that as well.
Gotcha. Okay. And while we're on this topic, since it's such a big one with the roof, let's say the roof is at its end of life. You can't get it insured. We as a lender actually have, a renovation loan where someone could actually get a new roof, build that into the loan, the financing of that roof. But what type of insurance is it? Like kind of a bare bones type of policy? What is something like that when the roof is, shot? What kind of policy can someone get just until they replace it?
You actually have two options in that regard. If you're going to do, if it's going to take a little longer than 60 to 90 days to do whatever renovation is, you can write a builder's risk policy. If you're going to be doing the roof within 60 days, Citizens will allow you to have a signed roof contract and submit it for approval, and they will insure it the way it is as long as the roof gets put on within 60 days of the closing.
Okay, so it's more time frame is going to determine that. Okay, gotcha. All right, another question three here is I've heard, and I know we've kind of gone back and forth with this over the years, but the flood maps are changing again. So, can you kind of talk to us about that as far as when it's changing and what areas are going to be impacted? And I guess you can really focus on Broward County, but if you want to enlighten us with some other areas too, that'd be great.
I'm sure. Actually, it's Broward County that is the one that did the changes. So it's only Broward
Mm,
County, and the majority of it's actually in southern Broward County. So Miramar, Pembroke Pines, Cooper City, Hollywood. Those are the cities that are really affected by it, and it's about 100,000 people are now going to be put into required flood zones. So where they'll be required to purchase the flood insurance if they have a lender.
And when does that go into effect, you said?
August 1st.
August 1st. Okay. So let's say you're one of those 100,000 people. Is it safe to say that like the insurance agent or the company would be mailing them a notice saying, "Hey, you're now in a flood zone and you're required to get flood insurance," or
Would actually be on the lender side. So the lender would have to send them a letter saying that they're requiring the flood insurance, and then we can go ahead and write them a flood policy. We've been pretty proactive on this in the agency because we've seen this coming for a few years now. So we have been trying to write more flood policies and advise the customers that we know are already going to be in flood zones to purchase a flood policy already.
okay. And let's say they own the home free and clear. So the lender's not going to obviously reach out to them. Is there a way that they would know? Would they be notified some way of this new change?
The only way they would be notified is if an agent notified them to let them know. So we are running our existing book of business to see how many of our customers are affected. So we can be proactive in reaching out to them and saying, "Hey, the flood maps are changing. Let's try to get you a flood policy in effect as soon as possible."
Gotcha. Okay. All right. And then fourth question here. Citizens. So citizens insurance, I've always been told and what I've seen firsthand is that they were kind of like the insurance of last resort. Like, it was always if you couldn't get insured in the state of Florida, citizens almost had to take you. But I see citizens now being more of a first choice or the only choice. And that's when I say now over the last, several years. So is that true? Like with citizens, like are they usually the only option? And I believe there's some changes going on with them too when it comes to their flood requirements. So if you want to touch on that.
Sure. Yes, absolutely. You are correct. It's Citizens, unfortunately, in Tri County, Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach, a lot of times it is the only option. And due to those claims and the companies not wanting to write in this area, we have seen some changes in the past 6 months so that more companies are starting to open up and write. Unfortunately, the rates aren't there yet. So a lot of people do end up in Citizens because their rates are 20% more than what the standard company is offering. So going forward, as more companies start to write, their competition will start to come in more and we'll see those rates come down naturally.
Perfect. Okay. So this is where the additional carriers coming back into the state is just going to help across the board.
Absolutely. Yes.
Excellent. And was there any specific requirements with them, like on flood, like even if you weren't in a flood zone or?
Yes. As yes, as of 2027, all customers will be required to have a flood policy with Citizens, regardless of their flood zone. So it doesn't matter what flood zone you're in. As of 2027, everyone. And each year, depending on your dwelling coverage, Citizens will require you to carry flood insurance. So as we go along, more and more people will be required to carry flood, regardless of what flood zone they're
Oh, so at that point, what your flood zoning designation doesn't even matter to citizens.
in. Correct.
They're just going to want you to have flood. Okay. All right. So 2027, I guess we have a good, 2.5 years here to prepare for that.
Yeah, and that's for everybody. So like this year, it depends on your coverage limit. So anybody that has a coverage limit 500,000 and above, this year it's required. Next year it'll be 400, 300 as we go until it gets to 2027.
Okay. And Dina, real quick, because I think there's some people out there that don't really know if they're getting ready to buy or haven't purchased. Like, unless you're smack on the water, right? Like, or on the ocean or intercoastal, like, what is a typical flood policy? And I'm not going to hold you to this because I know it can change But what's a typical flood policy, maybe just in an, a property that is not coastal? Like what do you see on average?
Yeah, between $600 to $700 for the year.
Okay. So not too crazy.
Not
Not too good.
but again, it depends if you're in the coast or you're closer to a body of water, or your property is below elevation. Sometimes it can increase the premium as well. But on average, it's about $700.
Okay. Perfect. All right. And lastly here, Dina, when someone is, looking to purchase a new home, we mentioned the roof, but are there any like things or a few items that they should really kind of concentrate on or be aware of that could produce the lowest premium for them? Like what are the big factors that they got to look out for to try to that either could increase or decrease their insurance premium?
Sure. I always say when you're looking for a home, look at the roof first. See what the roof age is first, because that's going to be a big factor. On the credit, the biggest credit though is the storm shutters and impact windows. So in order to get that credit, all openings must be protected. So if you have shutters or impacts on everything but the front door or the garage door, you're not going to get the credit. So to look for that is a big thing. Also, the electrical boxes. There are certain electrical boxes that are recalled, so insurance companies won't take them. So if you're looking at the preferred companies, certain electrical boxes too. But the biggest thing is the roof and the storm or impact shutters.
Okay. And now let me dive into the storm shutters a little bit because I get this question a lot. Does it make a difference in the premium, the type of shutters you have? So, like, would impact glass get a lower premium compared to accordion shutters or the panels? Is there
No, not
any?
a, no. As long as they're Miami-Dade County approved, you could have one window with an impact and the next window with accordion shutters. As long as it meets the approval for Dade County, you're fine.
Okay, so it's not going to really benefit you to spend extra money to get a certain type of protection. Oh, your sound went out just a little bit there. So,
No.
yeah.
No, as long as it's protected, it's the same credit. So whether it's impact or shutters, it's the same exact credit.
Okay, perfect. Good to know. And then real quick on that same topic, with new construction, can you explain like why newer homes tend to have a lower premium? Now, some of it we know because obviously the roof is new, like you talked about, the electric box is going to be new. But why else is it that like newer homes tend to just carry a much lower premium than maybe an existing home, even though the existing home has a new roof and has storm shutters?
There's actually two reasons for that. The first one is the entire structure is built to the new building codes, as compared to something that was built a little bit later, are those old building codes, not the newer ones. And the second reason is just the systems are newer. So you don't have, 20, 30 years of breakdown in the plumbing systems, electrical system, things like that. So it's kind of like a car. When your car is brand new, it's obviously not going to break down as compared to if it's 10 or 15 years old.
Gotcha. Okay. And other than, is there a certain year? I know the building codes down in South Florida changed maybe three times or so since the Hurricane Andrew. I think the first one is 94, but can you just remind us, like, if it's not a brand new construction, what was the most recent building code change or the last change, I guess there was down in South Florida?
Well, there was a Florida one done in 2012, but for homes built in Tri County, it's 2002.
2002. Okay, gotcha. Okay. That's when you'll see lower premiums compared to older homes built in the 1950s. Not much they can do to get that credit. Okay. Awesome. Well, Dina, this is very enlightening. I know this is a hot topic. So before I let you go, I just want to ask you one final question here. Like, what is your take on the insurance market kind of in the near future? So how do you see 2024 and then into 25 playing out with premiums?
Extremely hopeful in how much the rates will go down due to the fact that there's way more competition now. We've seen many companies actually ask for certificate of authority to write in Florida. They haven't started writing yet, but we're seeing those changes. So when those changes happen is when it affects the rate. So the more companies that start to write and start to open up, naturally the premiums will go down because they will have to, or those companies won't be able to write policies. So the more competition, the better as far as that's concerned.
Right. And I guess the only other thing is hopefully we get lucky and avoid like a major storm, right? I'm sure that would
Yeah,
be.
absolutely. And we won't see these changes until after hurricane season. They're being very cautious right now, and this is the way it always is at this time of the year. After hurricane season, the bulk of it happens. Then we start seeing carriers start writing more, getting more appetite after they see that there's not going to be any big storms.
Awesome. And Dina, if you don't mind, if someone wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that? Is it via email, text? What do you prefer?
Whichever they prefer. So we will email, text, phone call, whatever you prefer. However, your form of communication is how we communicate with you.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'll put that information below here in the video. But Dina, I just wanted to thank you. I really appreciate your time. This was very insightful. And you've given us some hope. You've given some homeowners some hope here with insurance in the future. So I just wanted to thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.